On the left is the size of an average UK car. On the right is the amount of floor space an average person in the UK takes up while standing. An average car in the UK is about 8 square metres in area and can carry about 4 people. In reality, however, most cars only have one person in them, the driver. Even when carrying 4 people, that's still 2 square metres a person. Cars have a habit of depersonalising people. It's hard for someone on the outside looking in to know how many people are in a car, and thus a car sort of becomes an avatar for the person inside it. A road full of cars in a city might look nearly full, but if you magicked away the cars and just left people standing on the road, you would see a loose smattering people spaced in about the same density as a city square on a Wednesday afternoon. It's then you realise that cars aren't really too space efficient. So remember my walkability episode where I went off on a tangent about car parking? Well, this is the video where I really kick the hornet's nest and talk about how inefficient cars are at moving people. So let's imagine a dystopia where the Daily Mail or Edinburgh Evening News commentators rule the world and all forms of public transport, cycling and pedestrianism is banned and everyone is forced to drive everywhere. Let's use Edinburgh Waverley as an example. In the period 2021 to 22, Waverley saw 13.618 million passengers pass through it. That is 37,309 people a day on average. Let's be very generous and assume that everyone is coming in 4 to a car. 37,309 divided by 4 is 9,327 cars. Assuming an average car area of 8 metres square, that is 74,616 square metres of just cars, bumper to bumper. How big is that? Well, that's about 10 FIFA standard football fields, and that is bumper to bumper. That is not including roads and pathways for people to actually access the car park. The multi-storey car park at Livingston Designer Outlet has 1,500 spaces. To fit all the people who went through Waverley in a day, you would need a car park 7 times bigger than the multi-storey car park at Livingston Designer Outlet. So imagine 9,327 cars all going into Edinburgh city centre and imagine the traffic problems that would cause. Let's say a single lane of traffic is about 2.5 metres wide. A 100 metre lane of traffic would be 250 square metres, and thus would fit 31 cars. 31 times 4 is 124 people. A tenth of a kilometre for 124 people. That doesn't sound too efficient, does it? All of this is just the people who went through Edinburgh Waverley Station, and it doesn't include the people who arrived at Edinburgh City Centre by bus, tram or bike, and it doesn't even include all the people who arrived at Haymarket and just walked in. All of this shows how inefficient cars are at moving large amounts of people, especially if they're all going to the same place. But let's compare those numbers to other vehicles. Let's say all those people arrived by double-decker bus. Edinburgh's largest double-decker carries 100 people. 37,309 divided by 100 is 373.09, but let's round up to 374. The bus in question takes up about 34.17 square metres. 34.17 times 374 is 12,779.58 metres square, or about 5 times less space than if everyone came in by car. Let's say all those people arrived by tram. The CAF Urbos Free Edinburgh is 42.8 metres long and 2.65 metres wide, and carries 250 people. 37,309 people divided by 250 is 149.236, or 150 trams. Let's say all those people came by train, and that train was made up of 2 Class 170 units a train. 2 Class 170s coupled together carry about 400 people. 37,309 divided by 400 is 93. 93 trains. Hell, just for fun, let's say all 37,309 people came in by bicycle. How much space would it take to park 37,309 standard bikes? Well, one parking space can fit about 10 bikes. So, 37,309 times 8 divided by 10 is 29,847.2 square meters, or about 4 FIFA football pitches. 10 football pitches versus 4. Now, here's the thing. Cities are meant to have a lot of people in them in high densities. That's why cities were developed in the first place, so people didn't have to go far to access resources. So, building a city around a form of transport that is so space inefficient just doesn't make sense, especially in places where you're moving large amounts of people from place to place. Imagine social distancing, except rather than merely keeping 2 meters apart, you had a special meter radius hoop around you that kept everyone 2 meters apart, no matter what. You wouldn't be able to fit as many people in a space as you normally would. Now, I wish I could end the video here, but I can almost hear the clacking of keyboards right now of people typing, "But I have to drive because," or "It's my right to drive," or "What about X thing?" Well, let's address those, shall we? Some people actually have to drive, but not everyone has to drive. One thing I keep hearing is, you can't take insert heavy thing on a bike. But hang on. First off, the places that sell heavy consumables like compost or kitty litter tend to deliver. Even if you drive for the big shop, you can get that delivered because most big shops qualify for delivery. But even then, if you're willing to spread your shopping throughout the week or month, you can just as easily do your shopping without a car. Take a leaf out of your grandmother's handbook and buy a granny trolley, or if that's too small for you, get one of these hand carts. You can bring them into the shop and walk home with your shopping. Hell, if you pair it with those scan as you shop handsets, you can be in and out quicker than if you did your shopping in the traditional way. You are not going to be driving home a new sofa on the regular. But what about the elderly or disabled, I hear you say? Well, here's the thing. A lot of disabled people either don't drive, can't drive, or can't afford to drive, and for them, car-dependent infrastructure is a hindrance, not an aid. I often find people making excuses or advocating for car dependency by citing the disabled and elderly, but the people who do that are rarely the elderly or disabled themselves, and are more often than not people who just want to drive everywhere at everyone else's inconvenience. There are some people who cannot drive or should not be driving. I do not think the blind or the very elderly should be locked in their homes because Karen and Dave believe it's their God-given right to drive everywhere. Even the effects of car dependency hurt the disabled when they can get somewhere without a car. Narrow, cluttered pavements next to busy roads do not help anyone with a disability. An elderly person can't take their mobility scooter down here. A blind person will have to dodge obstacles. Even someone with sensory issues, like those common with autism, will be affected by the traffic noise. More often than not, an accessible street looks a lot like a traffic calmed or even pedestrian street. The whole idea that someone with mobility issues is going to be driving an SUV from shop to shop simply isn't true. But even if you do have to drive, well, the Dutch have figured it out. Dutch cities have Autolu zones that are closed off to all traffic except for local residents, deliveries, the disabled, and of course, bicycles. They tend to be commercial zones, but some residential zones are Autolu too. This allows people who genuinely have to drive to get somewhere to get where they need to be without it being a total free-for-all. You'll find that a lot of issues brought up can be addressed by pointing at something the Netherlands has done. But my area is so car dependent that I need to drive. I don't have an option. Okay, well, the solution to car dependency is never solved by aggressively preserving the status quo or accelerating the status quo, but by working to solve the issues that led to car dependency. Livingston has a bus system that is frankly terrible. If you want to go from Livingston North Station to the main shopping centre, it takes you 21 minutes, compared to 7 minutes by car or even 15 minutes on a bike. The buses seemingly on purpose go the most circuitous route possible. The solution to this is to have buses that connect popular places and transit hubs with each other using more direct routes. Hell, West Lothian Council could even give it a fancy name like Livingston BRT or something. But even if you live in the middle of nowhere with no decent public transport, let me remind you of parking rides. Yes, they solved the problem of traffic by exporting it somewhere else with more space, but most cities have them, and it's better to have people park outside the city and get the train, tram or bus in, than have a load of cars clogging up the city centre. But what about deliveries and tradespeople and people who have to drive for work? Yeah, you're right, some people have to drive. But wouldn't it be better for them to not have to fight through traffic to get places they have to be? Not everyone on the road is a tradie or a delivery driver or a doctor or a carer. Some of them are smuggled commuters who don't want to have to take the bus or the train when they genuinely can, and instead taking their SUV to their office job right next to a central station. Reducing the amount of car journeys that need to be done with efficient public transport, walkability and cyclability will help people who genuinely need to drive. My target isn't the Uber Eats driver or the Amazon courier or the person in a wheelchair, but the person who believes it's their God-given right to drive to River Island on Princess Street, park right outside the door like it's a Hollywood movie, and explains away why they can't take the bus with "What about the disabled?" on Facebook. But it's my God-given right to drive. No, it's not. Your right to drive can be taken away by your government if you break enough laws. Your right to swing around your arms ends at the end of my nose. The solution to things like delivery and trade access, disabled accessibility, car dependency and access shops and services isn't more cars. It's more public transport, better street design and better policy, because to be frank, cars are really inefficient at moving people around en masse.